In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we'll have beastly monster GPUs and roaring CPUs, and we might just fall asleep in front of you as well. I'm not kidding. Next. Welcome back to yet another fine episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. And we have lost far too much sleep this week because our friends at Nvidia and Intel have been pummeling us with new technology. How you doing there, Marco? Are you still with us? Are you on the right side of the dirt, as they say?
Doing fantastic. And I am on the right side of the dirt, for better, for worse.
No, that's for better. I'm going to say it's for better. There you go. There's some daily...
I think it depends who you ask.
Daily affirmation with Dave. It's for better that you're alive. Chris, are you alive? Are you breathing over there, kid? Is your, plasma coursing through your veins?
I am doing good. I don't have the fancy side-by-side screen set up for myself, but I do have beer. And not just any beer, a very Maine beer. I've got the Allagash 16 Counties for, of course, the 16 counties in Maine. And on the back of my glass, I have none other than Mr. Bunyan. The one and only.
Hey, so I'm drinking a little bit of suds from the local flavor as well. And this stuff is nectar of the gods, in my opinion. This is from Trillium Brewery. Trillium, excuse me, I-U-M. Trillium Brewery.
Which you've had one of their brews on the stream before, right?
I don't think I have. No. This is Cut and Tiles IPA. It's a double IPA, New England style. Super, super hazy, juicy New England style. It's like dinner in a glass. And Trillium Brewery is a wicked good, wicked pisser brewery in the Boston area that they microbrews, craft brews, just super good stuff. So right. Trillium, I'll give them a plug any day of the week. Trillium.
Well, if you don't have good beer, you don't have anything, right, Marco?
Yeah, exactly. So I have this rather effeminate large glass of water. Ooh, hi everybody.
Shout out.
Marco likes to stay hydrated, but he's not a beer guy. You're not a beer guy at all, right, buddy?
I'm not a booze guy at all. I don't think I've ever had any alcoholic beverage, took a swig and was like, oh, I need another one of those. Like I'll force them down, when you need a good buzz, but I just don't enjoy it. Interesting.
Wow. Okay. Well, hey, that's cool. Whatever floats your boat or doesn't, you get into other things like cameras and lenses and stuff.
Yeah, and I picked, I back the winning horses like Olympus.
Didn't they go out of business?
And peer pressure your friends into new lens purchases. Ask me how I know.
So today, Chris was contemplating the purchase of a couple lenses, and I told him the world is in shambles. Have a little bit of enjoyment in your life. Buy the lenses, and he did it.
Right. So it's time for the 70 to 200 finally that I've been eyeing ever since I got into photography. So should be here next week. Awesome.
George, get the good glass, right?
Exactly.
As they say. Yeah, well, we're all on DSLRs now for the podcast, so that's good. Hopefully our pixels are looking tight, as they say.
Wait a minute. Dave. You guys are on DSLRs. I'm in the mirrorless world.
Oh, whatever.
I was going to let it go. I was going to give him some patience.
Captain Mirrorless. Okay. That's fine. I'm getting a little itchy.
Interchangeable lens cameras is what we can say.
There you go.
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, so yeah, you'll have to excuse my scruff. You'll have to excuse my scruff. Marco looks fresh. And if we're a little bit punky today, because we've been busting hump all week. Why are you laughing?
That's so funny. I haven't heard that in a long time. That's funny.
We've been busting hump. That's what we've been doing. Absolutely. It's just like I don't know. Anyways, the Boston vernacular coming out again. The good folks at Nvidia keeping us busy, and Intel. So lots of launches this week. Lots of great, exciting stuff for the Q4 holiday geek shopping season that is fast coming upon us. And if you're still in that stay-at-home vibe to counter the pandemic, then you're in good shape, because there's lots to stay home and play with for toys for good geek girls and boys. So let's cover the headlines and some of the deep dive stuff And I think, what do you think? We should maybe leave the big GPU for the back end and talk about mobile first,
Sure, let's
little
do it.
Tiger first. Yeah, let's talk Tiger first because I know folks are probably clamoring for RTX 30 series, but we'll get to that in short order. I promise you.
You like to be cruel.
Today we launched. Yeah, it's cruel to be kind or something like that, right? Or kind to be cruel. Hey, so yeah, Intel Tiger Lake and Xe graphics bench. Nothing about it that's ready for retail. But on board, the platform, Tiger Lake, is getting very soon ready for retail. And so Intel sent it on in for testing and kicking the tires on. We put it through a myriad of benchmarks. I'm going to actually hold the machine up now. It is a quad-core Core i7. Oh, it's very thin. You can't even see it. Core i7 1185G7 is the model number in this laptop. Ice Lake predecessor product before that, 10th generation. So this is 11th gen Tiger Lake with 12th gen, or Gen 12, I should say, graphics on board, Xe, Iris Xe graphics. And so in a thin and light machine, dialed in quad core, and we ran it through the benchmarks. We weren't able to get into battery life yet because this is a machine that isn't ready for retail. And so obviously OEMs are still tweaking battery and thermals and fan profiles and all that good stuff, power and fan. And so, yeah, we just looked at performance and looked at, I guess, a little bit of thermal performance, but not relative to battery life, thermals and acoustics. What we found was performance-wise, Tiger Lake is pretty freaking strong. Looks at lots of things from JavaScript to lots of different SDKs that are used for web experiences. And as you can see in that initial chart, Tiger Lake is way ahead, like significantly ahead versus a bunch of other machines we had out there. And we had a range of quad-core, 6 and 8-core machines. We had the AMD Ryzen 7 4800U in the mix for all of our testing as well, because that's a comparison that Intel had when it announced Tiger Lake. It was prominent throughout all of its benchmark comparisons. Starting with Browser Bench Speedometer 2.0, strong performance there, way ahead. You get down to something like Geekbench, which shows you a little bit more, multi-threaded workload, a little bit higher in workload. Again, synthetic testing, real strong single-thread performance, very strong and competitive multi-thread performance as well. Cinebench was a little bit less favorable. And when you look at different TDP settings or different power envelopes, and we tested 15 watts, 28 watts, and then what Intel calls PL1 28 dynamic, so dynamic tuning on top of that 28 watt thermal envelope. When you get to the higher thermal envelopes, certainly in something like Cinebench that's heavily threaded and a heavy duty, longer duration workload, it stayed out in front as well, and was competitive with, behind certainly the 8-core Ryzen 7 4800U, but way ahead of Ice Lake and the quad-core variants from previous generation. When you get into real application performance, and we looked at anything from Microsoft Office, to Adobe Premiere and Photoshop. These are apps that are tuned with Intel accelerators on board. Again, Tiger Lake way ahead in some of these workloads. And we did it in Adobe Premiere Photoshop combination, what they call RUG, which is Relative Usage Guide. Do I have that right? I'm trying to think what the R is. I'm forgetting what the R. Anyways, representative. Yeah, relatively representative usage guide. Anyways, so you're looking at the Office Productivity Rug there. Again, Tiger Lake on top by a lot. And that's versus towards the bottom there, the second one up from the bottom, is the Ryzen 7 4800U. Adobe Premiere. Scrolling down one more, Chris. That is, again, the same situation. Way ahead in this mixed content creation workload of Photoshop and Adobe Premiere, kind of a video editing flow. Again, these are tools that Intel set up for us to look at, but real applications with real workloads that are very mainstream. And so, but obviously those two suites are, they're going to be benchmarks, or I should say applications where Intel shines. What was really impressive, and then Marco, I want to get your take on this as well, of course. What was really impressive was the performance that was delivered from Intel Iris Xe graphics in gaming. And lo and behold, Intel made good there on their claim. It's actually, for sure, 2x, twice the speed, or twice as fast, twice as much performance as the previous gen Ice Lake Gen 11 graphics, and really just impressive. So here you're looking at 3D Mark Time Spy. You can see on the top at all power envelopes, 15 watt is probably the shortest bar in gold there for Intel, then 28 watt, and then 28 watt dynamic tuning on the top, ahead of the Radeon IGP in this Ryzen 7 4800U, just ahead. And then scrolling down to night rate a little bit, lighter duty, same thing. You get into a real game like Middle-earth: Shadow of War, which is kind of a favorite for ours because it's not a totally GPU crusher, but it's a good mainstream popular game. At high, medium, low settings, as you can see, again with the arrows pointing into the groupings there at high, medium, low, you've got Tiger Lake on top, with the exception of that top grouping there, which is actually a now discontinued processor from Intel, the Core i7-8705G, which has Radeon RX Vega M graphics, actually a 20 compute unit, I believe, or 20 core Radeon Vega discrete but multi-chip module package, if you recall. So not quite as powerful as that in Middle-earth: Shadow of War. Scrolling down to Gears Tactics, Again, you see the same thing here. We didn't have the benefit of all of our other laptop database to pull in, but we did pull in the Ryzen 7 4800U at second up from the bottom. And you can see, Tiger Lake at its 50 watt envelope is the second group down, and then on top is Tiger Lake at 28 watts. And so really impressive performance all around. Haven't looked at battery life yet, so we can't say for sure how this thing looks as a complete mobile solution, but impressive. And I'll leave it there for my compatriot Marco to share his food for thought.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, so this is not a retail platform. So there's only, so deep we're going to dive in. This is just an interesting take based on a reference platform. But the big takeaway for me is that Intel has the best integrated graphics now. Like that's crazy. There was a time where that would be unheard of, and now versus AMD's Ryzen 4000 series with a very strong integrated GPU, Intel just crushed them with a platform that's probably not fully optimized yet. So that part of the story is really impressive to me. And if you look across the breadth of tests that we had, it's going to be really hard for 4 cores to compete with an 8-core Ryzen in anything deeply multi-threaded. But if you see, that's a huge lead in single thread, though, that Tiger Lake had over the Ryzens. And that fast single thread was what makes that PC feel snappy and responsive, and that great user experience when you're just tooling around on the web. So I'm really looking forward to Tiger Lake. I'm really looking forward to a highly optimized retail platform like the next XPS or something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's really what it amounts to. I mean, this is great. We've got an MSI 14-inch, 2.6-pound machine. So what you gain from that, what you can glean from that is, what does performance look like in this weight class of notebooks? And so, yeah, it's a nice relative gauge and sort of sets the expectation. But yeah, what the OEMs do when they refine these platforms and how they tune it, that's really where the rubber meets the road. And we've had, like, for example, Dell XPS 13, when it came in with its first generation Ice Lake revamp. That machine, Dell found a way to get that machine to sort of jump out in front of a lot of other machines, again, with the same mobile platform, but whatever mojo they were able to bake in, whether it be power targets and fan profiles, they were able to squeeze a lot out of a really small form factor 13-inch machine. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch. What are your thoughts, Marco? And we should get into this quickly, because it's a little tricky. Obviously, Superfin, here's my shirt. Got my Superfin shirt on. Superfin really helped Intel out a lot. Yeah, I'm showing off, right? Superfin is what I would say, what I termed in the Tiger Lake performance preview. Superfin is 10 nanometer done right for Intel. It's where they should have been before they had these troubles with the delay in 10 nanometer. And really, it's impressive to see what Superfin afforded them from a dynamic power curve standpoint with Tiger Lake, and the fact that you can scale this processor up to 4.8 gigahertz, and in the same power envelope have its base clock be only 3 gig, down to as low as 3 gigahertz. It's really a base and peak clock speed, an impressive achievement. Again, brought to you by an enhanced process. What are your thoughts about this thing from Tiger Lake relative to, I guess, its efficiency relative to clock speed? I mean, we're seeing performance gains to the tune of 20% in the CPU, 2x GPU. I mean, let's face it, Xe graphics, Iris Xe is what it is. That's impressive. It's graphics throughput, and there's no other way to slice it. It's a great integrated graphics core. But the CPU side, what are your thoughts with that whole clock speed game?
I think it's absolutely what Intel needed. Like, as strong as Ice Lake was, that first gen 10 nanometer, to have that super low, what is it, like 1.3 gigahertz base clock, that was just indicative of how much optimization was necessary to get that broad power envelope sort of addressed and keep battery life good while also having that high peak performance. So absolutely what they needed. That 3 gigahertz base clock is probably, a large part of why you see that really strong single thread performance, because it's just not going down to those, much lower speeds. And the average sustained clock is just significantly higher. So, even without the other architectural benefits and platform benefits, it should just be a super strong part, assuming power is in line. We weren't able to test battery life on this platform, so we can't say for sure. But all signs point to this being a really, really good mobile platform for a really broad scope of users. Unless you need many, many cores, Tiger Lake is probably going to be the best choice for, the vast majority of people. And the numbers now, in my opinion, look really good, even with this early platform that we got to check out.
Yeah. And of course, we know that Intel's gone on record and said, yes, there will be 8-core mobile Tiger Lake CPUs. They are on the horizon, so there will be core for core equality. That will be a very interesting, scenario to look at when it's available. So when you get into the CPU crusher, multi-threaded, workloads and benchmarks for heavy duty content creation, and even things like Cinebench, what's it going to look like then? A couple of questions in the chat. I think it was James. Good to see you, James Pryor. Who said, what do you guys think about clock for clock, core for core efficiencies? And that's kind of what I was getting at is, obviously Intel's gaining some serious traction here based on clock speed alone. Doesn't really matter if it's in the same power envelope and gives you the same kind of battery life. Thermals are relatively tame and in check and acoustics, which we did. I observed under full load that this laptop didn't get above, it was like 47, 48 dB. So it's totally tame, acceptable versus, kind of what we see from retail machines. Doesn't matter, right? Or, I mean, hey, we got the clock speed, we got the power. If it's in this, it's good battery life and the acoustics, doesn't matter.
I I don't think so. Like, that's the thing. We can get caught up in the benchmarks, but
right.
The experience and what the end user actually experiences in real world use is what's important. To do a real true clock for clock comparison, like, it's just not easily done, or really couldn't be done with this platform. We don't have another mobile platform where we could just, tweak the multipliers and get a real clock for clock comparison with the right platform. You can play with the math on the numbers, but, you have different memory, different, just a completely different platform, different storage in there that affects some tests. So there's lots of reasons that could throw off some sort of analysis like that. So unless we had the ability to actually do a true clock for clock comparison, you're just guessing no matter what, no matter how you play with the numbers. So, but again, I'm going to assume it's really close to Sunny Cove in the real world, because Intel's admitted they didn't really change much except for the cache, right? But if you get that higher clock and battery life ends up being as good or better, there it is, like that's what's important. So if 10 nanometer SuperFin got them to this point where this whole entire platform crushes their previous one, and the end user ends up with a much better experience because of it, awesome. Buying a new notebook in December,
Yeah. What I was sort of trying to tease out of you a little bit as well was, okay, we've got the benefits of SuperFin here with Tiger Lake and this additional clock speed at acceptable power profiles, and we assume once we get retail systems in, acceptable battery life. What does the next gen look like when we re-architect the cores, when there's additional tuning, when there's fatter caches, when they're able to realize SuperFin and the benefits it can bring to a re-architected core? Because they said, not much different than Sunny Cove, a little bit of tweaks to the cache, but for all intents and purposes, not much different than Sunny Cove. So Willow Cove is kind of refined Sunny Cove. It's not true next generation Arc. I wonder what the next generation is going to look like and how close it might be. We'll never know.
Even conservatively, like you look through the past few years, or through the past decade, basically, for Intel, you see a couple of percentage point improvements through, without completely revamping the architecture, a couple of percentage points each generation. But since this is the first gen SuperFin, 10 nanometer SuperFin, I'm going to assume the 10 nanometer SuperFin Plus, if that's what it's called, let's say that gets Intel another 10%, right? That might be a little aggressive, but let's say they get another 10%. They tune the architecture and get another 5 or 6%. That's a big jump. That's a big jump in single thread. And if they can keep power down, or figure anything else out and get those 8 cores down into smaller form factors, there's a path to some really killer high powered machines. But we're speculating. Who knows? Who knows what Intel has in the tank? We do know their competitor is full speed ahead and have announced their next gen Arc is going to be shown off in just a few weeks. So,
right,
man. Lots of stuff happening.
yeah, we're going to be busy, but and I think it's going to be interesting to watch how AMD rolls out the next gen mobile Arc. We know the desktop Arc is going to come sooner than that. Typically, mobile Arc or mobile products, I should say, trail. So it'll be interesting to see how they how they react here, because Tiger Lake is strong. It's looking strong. So it'll be fun to watch. I think. Intel obviously has had a command of the mobile PC, laptop, notebook market for a long time now. I think that's the last sort of, battleground that AMD needs to try and crack. And they've made some inroads for sure with Ryzen 4000. I mean, it's a great product. Lots of design wins. I don't think we're seeing quite the volume we expected just yet out there in the channels, but Tiger Lake sort of retrenches Intel in this market. And so it'll be fun to watch, how the competitors react. And if AMD has a near-term answer to Tiger Lake, once Tiger Lake 8 core comes along, I mean, now we're at core parity, for the most part. So we'll have to see. Fun.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
All right, so let's move on to the big gun from Nvidia. Big guns going on. Marco's actually done a couple of reviews. Nvidia GeForce RTX 3080 review. Ampere is a gaming monster. There it is. There's the Founders Edition card. It's so pretty. We were really impressed, and we try, and every time we get some of these products in, we try and not get too glowy enthused when something is impressive, but damn, that's a good looking card, man. It really is. It's I guess it's a good looking card if you're a geek, and we appreciate the engineering that went into that thermal solution. But anyways, Marco, you step through the benchmarks, you step through the card. Tell us all your joys or your peaks and valleys, whatever.
Let's look at it first. It is, I wasn't feeling it with the renders that came out, but in person, it really is an attractive card. I'm going to try to hide my face here because the eye detect on the camera is probably going to screw up the focus. So hopefully that's in focus. That is the front side of the RTX 2080. There's the back, so you can see the other fan on the back, kind of funky looking. You can probably see through that heatsink a little if my lighting is right. I have the power adapter. Let me try to lower it here, plugged in. So there's the little tiny 12-pin plug with the adapter on there. And here's a quick look at the ports. So triple display port, 1.4A, I think it was, and a single HDMI 2.1. The USB-C connector that was on Turing is gone. I guess nobody was using it. But yeah, I probably should have pulled the other the custom board out of my test rig, but it's over here next to me. I can't pull it out right now. So there's lots of stuff to consider here, right? If you just look at the numbers, right? And I can't fathom why there's some trolls all over the web, poo-pooing the performance.
Yeah.
Because this initial card, right, for $700 asking price, at least according to Nvidia, there's rumors that new cards are coming, whatever. We're not going to get into availability and that crap just yet. But at its introductory price point, assuming there's people that got them at that price, you're looking at a $699 card that crushed everything, including a $2,500 Titan RTX. So, I did not go back and test the 2080. I figured most people have 2080 Super at this point. That's, a generation and a half back. Versus the similarly priced 2080 Super, you're looking at about 40 to 60% faster in most stuff. There's going to be, some give and take. And what we found at 1440p, lots of stuff, even with, an 18-core high-end desktop platform, is CPU limited. So you need a super fast CPU to make sure you're feeding this beast. But at 4K, it literally can't be touched. 4K smooth gaming, reality for everyone. 8K gaming, a possibility with that HDMI. With HDMI 2.1, nice clean setup with a single cable, and just across the board, right? So temperatures are good, acoustics were good, rasterization performance best in the world until next week when the 3090 comes. Ray tracing performance best in the world again until next week when 3090 comes. By just about every metric, it's killer. If you go to look at power, you'll see that it's the highest, it's the least power friendly card of the bunch. Highest idle power, highest average power, highest peak power. But it's not completely out of line considering how big the GPU is and looking at the performance. It consumed a little more power than the Titan RTX, and it outperformed the Titan, RTX. So I'm thoroughly impressed from strictly what was delivered. It's just an awesome card. I haven't had something arrive in the lab where you plug it in and it literally crushes stuff that, not everybody was happy with Turing's pricing, right? But for NVIDIA to roll in with something that just obliterates their highest end prosumer GPU. Titan's not really a consumer GPU, but it just obliterates everything. That's friggin' that's awesome in my book. Period. That's it. I know there's people are going to poo-poo that and say, oh, it's not the 2x this, and it's not it's not a big enough jump for how many more transistors it is. Don't sweat that stuff. If Nvidia didn't disclose die size and transistor count, and you just looked at the numbers, you'd be like, holy crap. So I'm impressed.
Yeah. No, I think some people got hung up on the claims that Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang made about, it's 2x the performance of and I want to underscore this, of a 2080, not a 2080 Super, not a 2080 Ti. And we, of course, tested a 2080 Super. But what he was referring to was a 2080 at the launch of the first round of Turing. So,
with full ray tracing.
Right. And that's the other thing to remember is, he's talking about, games where, or in titles where you have ray tracing involved, which shows, strong performance, obviously, for NVIDIA with those RT cores. But yeah, you really can't knock it. And I guess what sticks out to me with this card, and I've said this before, but, once I got it in myself and started testing with it, the complete engineered solution is what impresses me as well. Certainly the GPU and the performance it brings with those 28 million transistors, it's impressive. The performance, curve across all various different types of workloads, in game titles, it's impressive. But I'm really impressed with how NVIDIA just engineers the heck out of everything about the card. It's, that push-pull design, the thermal design, I'm impressed with that. I like the fact that they went and did that 12-pin connector, because, it's certainly a more compact, future connector that I think makes more sense than a pair of bulky 8 pins. But, for now we have to adapt and dongle, or I should say convert from them, to the 12-pin. But I think that makes sense as well. Everything about it, I just think, the fact that you still have dual axial, but you get exhaust out of the case, out the back plate, that whole setup, that whole physical, well-engineered setup, just impresses me, as well as the GPU. Yep. So, we're fans of that. I guess, and I'm going to be more interested to see what the 3070 does at that price point, because that, I think, is going to be the sleeper that, could be impressive once we get in sometime in October.
Yeah, that's that series of cards is typically where the bulk of the sales are. Going back to the connector, James is asking what's the power rating. It adapts to 8 pins, so it's 300 watts. But one thing I don't like about the implementation on here is, because the connector is angled like this. I don't know. Hopefully that's in focus.
Yeah, it's up top.
The only way to run your cables is to cover your lighted GeForce logo. Like, you can't easily route it up or down. So this lighted portion of the shroud, you have to cover it, which, it is what it is. Most people might be, mounting their cards up right now, whatever. Minor issue. The partner cards that came out have the traditional connectors. So people that are used to managing their cables won't have to deal with that. For the most part, I didn't see too many with the 12-pin plug on there for now.
But Chris, you had a couple things you wanted to jump in and add, right?
Yeah, well, I just have a question, and I don't know why it's showing Marco's face. Hang on. There we go. As part of my audio fix for the browser. Long story. So I've got a friend who's looking at the 3080, but his power supply, even though it's a 1,000-watt power supply, has a 8 and 6-pin connector. So will an 8 and 6-pin connector feed into that adapter, or are there going to be issues?
Depends on the power rails on his PSU. So if he has a single high-powered rail, if he just adapts the 6 to the 8-pin, it'll work. If those are separate rails and one's too weak, it may not. It depends on the power supply. But if he's powering something high-end now, he's probably going to be okay. But it's tough to say without knowing exactly what power supply it is and how the rails are configured.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions in the chat?
Let's see. There was some stuff earlier we might have burned through. You did so 2-on had going back to Tiger Lake, hopes it ends up in an Optiplex 7070. That's a very safe bet that will happen. Andy Lin, way early, saying, interested to see modern CPUs bottleneck the 3080, like the 3900X at 1440p. Yeah, like I think any CPU out today, except for maybe a highly overclocked 10900K, is going to be the bottleneck at 1440p or below. This card's just that powerful. I don't think, what else do we miss here? I think that's it. I think we're caught up. We got some nice compliments on the Olympus. Thank you. I like it.
So yeah, no.
Yeah. Dave and I just need capture cards so that we can get on that level too. But
Intel Superfin shirt, and by like accident, I have my Ryzen jacket on. So we're balanced, dude. We're dueling banjos today.
See, I'm just gonna throw it out there that I don't have any swag except for some main gear stuff, because main gear is good to me. But just saying.
Bring the swag, is what he's saying. No, it's all good. We wear our swag proudly because we work with all these companies, and yes, we have a little Intel and a little AMD, so we get some yin and yang going on while we're talking about Nvidia. So there you go. I mean, you can't say we're bought and paid for by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so that's GeForce RTX 3080. Before we move on from the Founders Edition card, what about performance, I guess, kind of excites you most? So is it standard rasterization? Is it interesting what can be done with ray tracing now in terms of, okay, now flip everything on and crank it, and it's just gonna run and look beautiful, and you don't have to compromise. What's your takeaway from the general performance view?
So I mean, it's a no compromise solution for now, right? Except for what it's going to do to your wallet and the power it's going to use. What I think is the most important thing, assuming Nvidia sells a bunch of them up and down the stack, when all of the cards are released, I think the most important thing is and we have next gen consoles coming. I think we're going to see a nice giant leap in what game developers are willing to push onto the PC in terms of visual fidelity. Like we're about to hit a phase where every game being developed right now is going to have access to way more powerful hardware. So if you think stuff looks good now, I'm really interested to see what happens this time next year. That's what's exciting to me.
Agreed. I totally agreed. And we say this a lot. We say this, I shouldn't say a lot, but it's like every time there's a major leap in GPU architecture, where performance just, scales, significantly, exponentially, what have you, we say the same thing. Wait till you see the next gen graphics, and it's true. I mean, you look back over the generations where we started from and where we are today, and even a year or two ago, some of the graphics effects, the realism is just getting more and more to the point where, yeah, you're going to be looking at photorealism rendered real time, and that killing Call of Duty is going to be a little too real, probably, or whatever.
So two things. Like if anyone watching hasn't seen the Crysis 8K remastered trailer,
oh yeah,
like totally go watch that, because they do. They'll flash the original Crysis, and then they'll take the same scene and flash over to the 8K remastered, and you'll see the kind of crazy boost we've gotten since Crysis was released to today. And now we have James mentioned in the chat, because how's ray tracing adoption going compared to DX12 11.9? Obviously there is no comparison. It's way down compared to the adoption of the newer APIs. But I think there's two things that were happening there. One, Nvidia was the only player in the space, right? Which is not going to be the case come another couple of months. Two, it was first gen, and there was a lot that needed to be learned. This new architecture is so much more powerful and so much more approachable theoretically for a higher performance level than Turing, that maybe this is the push, between the next gen consoles and basically everybody supporting ray tracing, that this is the push that the market needs. On top of that, I ran the Crytek Neon Noir demo for a test, which is ray tracing, but not using the same method that RTX uses. It's using a proprietary method from Crytek that looks pretty darn good and runs on anything that's available today. So there's in addition to finally having hardware that's next level in terms of performance and having a wider install base once the next gen cards come and the next gen consoles, plus multiple methods available to do ray tracing, I think next year is the year where, adoption takes off. Like, we're guessing, who knows, but that's my guess.
No, I think you're right. I think we're reaching a point of, and like any technology, new technology that is disruptive, which ray tracing is, you need critical mass. And sure, Nvidia stepped out first, pioneered it. We could say they pioneered it. They made it real, for the average consumer, made it available. You can't deny that. But yeah, now you have critical mass. You have consoles that are going to support it. AMD is now going to support it. Some folks might say AMD sort of placed their bet and waited to enter when it was critical mass. No, I think that's probably being generous. Really, it's to the point now where it's available on all platforms, and so developers are going to be on board. And so, when you're a developer and you have a finite, set of resources, you develop to where you can, get the most install base. So yeah, now I think we have critical mass, and it's going to happen. It's good stuff. Let's see. We had one more in there. Tuan asks, have you tested HDMI 2.1 yet?
No, I don't have a display that will use it. The HDMI output works, but I haven't tested anything related to the capabilities of 2.1. And James threw two more things in there. Are the consoles using ray tracing in a way that will transfer simply to RTX? No, because I shouldn't say no 100%, because Nvidia does support DXR, Microsoft's API, but obviously, whatever AMD's doing is what's being leveraged in the console. So there's going to be some translation there. And James also is asking, will I test the latency? I actually want everybody's input on this. If you pay attention, everybody, because I want your input.
Pay attention.
Will you test the latency reduction technology, Reflex? Yeah, I'll test it eventually, because I do have the reviewer's kit and I have the tool to test latency. But I've been trying to digest what's the best way to put this stuff into reviews. What I put in the 3080 launch and the review today of the Palit card, was just sort of me playing with this, and because I had data, I put it in. But I don't think that's really interesting. What I think the most interesting latency measurement's going to be, and this will be a real pain in the stones to do, is what I think would be most interesting is to test a bunch of cards with a game that's got really fine-grained controls, where I can get the frame rate almost even between all of the cards, and then test latency and see if there's any difference. Or is it strictly because the faster card is faster, or are you getting the better latency? Yes, NVIDIA Reflex will work. Yes, AMD's latency reduction tech works if the game engine, works in those tweaks.
Right.
But once that's kind of pervasive, the real interesting thing is how much driver overhead and is being taken care of by each manufacturer with their software. So getting frame rates exactly the same, or as close to exactly the same, and then measuring latency is interesting to me, but figuring out how to do it, I haven't got there yet.
Yeah. With all of this stuff, our job doesn't get any easier, does it?
No, this reviewer's toolkit is cool. Like, I love the new power data we have. I love that.
Yeah.
But figuring out how to use the LDAT is racking my brain, because I know the Reflex is going to work. I know it is. So here's a game that runs at 300 FPS, and here's the latency savings. Great for esports guys. What I want to know is which platform has better latency characteristics, everything else being equal, because then you can sort of say it's the driver stack, right? Because it's the same OS, it's the same game, you're getting the same frame rate. Who's got work to do on their software? Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. That's why I'm asking everybody. So if you think I'm nuts, let me know.
You're definitely nuts, but you might not be wrong. So there you go. Hey, all right. So let's finish up with a little view of a new RTX 3080 card that you checked out, the Palit GeForce RTX 3080 Gaming Pro OC. These OEMs, they love to just add on the superlatives to their product names. But
if it doesn't say gaming, can it even game?
Yeah,
Yeah, and that adds 10 FPS right there.
yeah. And Gaming Pro has to be one word because it's cool. Anyways, we can make fun of their name all day long, but you know,
They all do it.
it's nice to see an OEM card in the door already. And this is a big custom Ampere, triple fan jammy. Is it triple slot?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, he says. So triple slot it's a behemoth of a card. Does it have all the RGBs going on too? Yeah, it's got RGB.
It's got like a little stripe and a section at the top. It's not over the top with the lighting.
Yeah.
Scroll down a little further, Chris.
Yeah. So, man, this baby.
That's tasteful.
Yeah.
So all right. Tell us your thoughts. I know you did performance. I know you checked thermals and noise and all that good stuff too, I'm sure. Tell us your thoughts on this. The first thought I have, and maybe I'm being, I don't know, snobbish or, purist or whatever, but that's triple fans. That is a stacked fat card, but that's going to dump all that heat in your case.
Now the front one exhausts. That whole front vent is that whole front case bracket is a vent.
Okay.
And
I know that.
The back of the card is pass through. The back of the card, even though it's a big beast like that, that back fan extends past the PCB. So that rear fan is blowing all the way through, like NVIDIA's design, to go out of the top of the chassis.
Okay.
So, and then it has that extra middle fan. What I will say that I think, and we were really time crunched to pull off these two articles, right? I think between the two articles, I did 12,000 words in like 3 days, right? So I'm fried. But what I think the difference is, technically, the Palit card had a higher boost clock by like 30 megahertz, right? So theoretically, it should have done a little better overall. Throughout the benchmarks, it kind of traded blows with the Founders Edition card. What I think NVIDIA's cooler does, NVIDIA's cooler is awesome, right? It does a great job staying quiet and keeping the GPU cool. I think it allows for better sustained clocks over the long term. So I saw better performance.
Really?
Yeah, better performance overall by a little bit. It's still a 3080. It's not like one crushed the other. I think NVIDIA's cooler is just next level in terms of efficiency and allowed for better sustained clocks. But the Palit cooler was actually, it spins down completely. So it's dead silent if it's not under load. And the fans only went up to 40%, even while overclocking. So it's really quiet, and the thermals were really, I forget the number. I think it only went up to 70 C under load.
Did you examine CPU temperatures with that as well on both cards, or just looking at the GPU?
Just look at GPU. My setup, the CPU, like I have a huge, like you can, if you scroll to the picture of the lighting in the Palit review, you can see a part of the cooler I have on top of my CPU. I have a ginormous tower, a Cooler Master tower with 6 heat pipes, and I don't see. Oh yes, that one with 6 heat pipes, and the fan is blowing. It's basically push pull because it's so close to the case fan. It's just exhausting immediately. My CPU doesn't get hot, like it just doesn't when you're not overclocking, so it's a non-issue. This blowing of the hot air directly in front of the CPU there, it's inevitable. It's going to raise people's CPU temps. Is it enough to affect anything? Probably not.
Yeah. No, so you're getting better thermals and acoustics than the FE is what you just said in the Founders Edition.
Yes and no. If I crank the fans up, so I test real world, I'm testing in a chassis just with the side panel off. So what you see in our reviews is what you can expect with a card in a chassis, in a mid tower with 3 additional fans: CPU fan, a case fan, and the PSU fan. So that's why you don't see a huge delta. The card's quiet. You don't see a huge delta, right? But if you look at, I manually cranked up all the fan speeds as well, just to see if it does ramp where you'll hit. And the Palit card is louder all the way up, which you'd expect. It's got 3 fans. It's got 33% or 50% more fans, I guess I should say. So it's louder if it were to go to those higher speeds, but it doesn't go to those higher speeds under real world conditions.
No, yeah,
So,
it doesn't need to. You get 3 fans, you get a lot of air movement.
Yeah.
Airflow. So yeah, that makes sense. A lot of air pressure at lower speeds. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, okay. Actually, one other thing occurred to me that I wanted to ask you about.
Okay.
So, 2 8-pin, standard PCI Express power connectors, 8-pin power connectors, also on top of the card.
Right.
Now, that may or may not be an issue for some people, but we're talking about PCB design that obviously controls that. So every partner, every OEM card is going to have that top mount, PCI Express power connector set up as well as the Founders Edition. It's either the 12-pin or the dual 8-pin. Have a nice day. I don't know.
The difference.
What are your thoughts of that?
I don't. When they're straight up and down, like it is, like traditionally, like we've been seeing, you can kind of route it any way you want. You can zip tie it real tight, bend it over the top, or bend it over the bottom. When it's out the back at an angle, you can't really go up or down with this adapter. Maybe so. Nvidia did say many of the high-end PSU manufacturers that make modular PSUs are going to come out with cables that will just plug into the PSUs. And if those are flexible and nice and neat, single cable, fine, you'll be able to route it nicely. But if you have to use this adapter, you don't have the flexibility to easily go up or down. So you're basically just going off the back.
Wouldn't you love to see a shroud with little loops that you could Velcro or zip tie your cable off of, either on the PCB or the shroud of the card?
And EVGA made that cool link adapter where it was a solid piece that ran down the back of the card, like it snapped onto their cards. I think we just got to come up with a better connector style. Like these big chunky. This crap is from the friggin' 80s. 400
watts through the motherboard.
Oh, I totally agree. My thought was that those 2 8-pin connectors and the 12-pin connector is much more mid card. So you're not at the end of the card. Like I'm looking here at my 2080 Ti in the system that's powering my feed right now. And the 2 8-pin connectors are on the back end of the card, a little bit pulled out of the way, where you can pull that cabling in through the bottom of the chassis and out of the way. You're a little bit more mid card now, and I'm thinking to myself, if I'm an OEM, a third party board partner, I would do the 12 if I could, and I'd figure out a way to route it to the back of the card so it's neat and clean in the back of the card. Now, wait, is that like it's not impossible. Like you got to get to the PCB. That's where the power feed is, but it's not like you can't wire it up.
Yeah, you could just hide an adapter inside the shroud and bring the cables to another part. I'll take flack for this, and people will laugh at me for this, but I don't care. I would totally go the Voodoo 6000 route, include a freaking external power adapter with a plug on the freaking plate, so you don't have any cables inside the system.
You're batshit crazy.
I know.
You want an AC adapter out the back of the case?
Hell yeah! Why not? Put that adapter outside the case.
Oh God!
Just have one, a single friggin' DC power jack coming in, and get the cables out of the system, man. Okay. James is laughing at me.
I think
Apple does not want to know your location.
But not, yeah. I personally, I don't know. It's a lot of kludge for me, but yeah, no,
I might not hate it. Because if you braid down the cables from the top, so I guess if you have the PSU at the bottom, top doesn't really matter. But if you braid the cables down in one neat row, anyways, it probably doesn't add too much to the back. No one's really looking at the back of your computer. I can see it. But does anyone want it?
That's what I'm saying is I'm just not digging that mid card location of the connector personally. But yeah, if we can get it back to the back edge, I think from a routing standpoint that's a little cleaner. Maybe,
yeah, it'll happen. Somebody will do it.
Yeah, and here I was praising the engineering feat
edition
of Nvidia, the engineering feat But yeah, that's one gotcha. I just, when I was looking at the Palit card, I'm like, yeah, why that connector's there again. It's a PCB routing thing, and it's not going to move easy.
It looks like the people are split in the chat on my ideas here.
Yeah, you probably dropped a grenade because I think you're crazy personally, but it's fine. Hey, to each his own.
So
That's why we're here.
We need to drop them into an arena game and duke it out for you, Marco. See if they can fight for your honor or prove you wrong.
No, nothing but love in these here parts.
And with that, we should probably call it a day because we're getting to the bottom of the half hour here. But yeah, it was fun. I think we have lots to look forward to here in Q4. Lots more work to do, unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be. It's good to be busy. I tell you that, right, buddy?
Yeah, I guess. No, it's exciting. You know what it is? It's good to have that sense of urgency, especially when it's so much new cool stuff.
Yeah.
I had a queue that was kind of built up before this, and I feel bad that I had to delay a couple of things to get this done, but we'll jump on it now this coming week. But this is that kind of exciting stuff that everybody just wants to play with, so it's good stuff.
Yeah. I have a feeling we're going to be firing fast and furious here right on through Q4. I mean, with all this new product being announced, there's going to be, OEM and retail product that will follow in droves. So that's a good problem to have. So, we will manage it as we can. Chris?
Can I point out that I have now finished the review for this, wherever it is. It's just waiting on one of them to be awake enough to edit it. So the giveaway is coming. It's in and ready.
Right.
Yeah.
I think. Go ahead. I was going to say we'll try to get that up Monday so we can announce the giveaway. Then we're all set.
Yeah, we may have other things. Anyways, again, the way that, but the giveaway could be announced because the point was, wanted to announce the giveaway close to or thereabouts the review, and the review, it's independent of the giveaway. But yeah, just so you're, keep in the.
I'm not getting one. This has got to go back. So. Whatever.
Yeah. Maybe if you wind enough, you could keep it. But no, it is going back, but we'll be giving it away. And that is the EK Liquid Gaming, seriously killer gaming rig that we'll be putting up for grabs very soon. And so, yeah, stay tuned for that in the weeks ahead. HotHardware.com, where you can find us on the web, twitter.com/HotHardware, youtube.com/HotHardwareVids, or HotHardware. You can thumb up, subscribe, would very much appreciate it. And hit the notification bell, the reminder bell, because that's like how you get notified when we go live to look at you all in our exhausted states. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, but we'll with that, we'll bid you adieu and thank you very much for stopping by.